right, everyone, are you ready? You y'all have requested this. We got the messages, so I'm gonna do it for you. Gather round, gather round, gather round, clowns. Michael Molthan, into the rock, coming to you from Dallas, Texas, and today Scottsdale, Arizona, the 214, Dallas, Texas, where we talk about everything. We talk about drug addiction, alcoholism, narcissism, trauma. Yeah, that's a big one. Trauma, anxiety, paranoia, depression, workaholism, anything visible that I am seeking to try to fix my invisible problems. Invisible problems. So this platform, it's proven we are all addicts. We are all addicts. And I tell you what, I am just personally so excited about this show today. I came across this gentleman. I'm not on social media a whole lot, but I'll jump on there, every once in a while. And I don't want to get caught in that trap of, it just overstimulates me and I can't shut my brain off. But I came across this gentleman on social media and his videos, and I could really connect with him, and I can relate to him because I sense so much transparency. But here's the most important thing that really got my attention is vulnerability. Vulnerability. When we are vulnerable, we are actually being brave. And so we have very rarely done this, but we actually reached out to this gentleman to ask to be on our show, and his assistant responded back immediately. And we are so excited about this show. Before I get started, make sure I'm getting better at this. It's call to action, so make sure that you subscribe, share this out. I hate doing this stuff. Share this out, like, comment, share, but really shares are important. I like the shares because people who need to see this message, when you share, you're actually doing service work and it'll reach someone that might be in need to hear this incredible message today. In the description, we will have Kenny Weiss's information and where you can follow him and check him out. I follow him myself, M to the Rock. We highly endorse our guest, Kenny Weiss. Kenny, welcome to the show.
Hello, Michael. Thanks for having me. I appreciate that. Thank you.
I am so excited about this, and we can go on and but I want to start out because we had a pre-meeting before we went on the air, and it was the first time that you and I have ever talked. And
Yeah.
what was so beautiful is I felt like I already knew you, and that power of connection. Because when I watch your snippets and your videos, I know that I'm connected because I'm doing this, right? So the
Yeah.
people who are listening on audio, I'm nodding my head up and down. And when I do that, there is a connection. And when I feel connected, there's a feeling of hope. I'm not alone. I'm not alone. But who is Kenny Weiss? Who are you? And just your elevator pitch, what do you do?
Well, quite a few things. I'm an author, a speaker, podcaster, YouTuber. I would probably call myself more of a teacher and healer.
Okay.
My life was a mess, and like all of us, childhood trauma, addictions, married two narcissists, nearly took my life, played a couple of pro sports I see now I never wanted to play. All I was ever doing was self-victimizing. And I sent by the time I was like 20 or 20, I think I was 21 was the first time I started looking for help and reaching out to counselors. And I went through many of them. And sadly, counselors, therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists are primarily trained to diagnose and prescribe medication. They're not taught how to heal. Well, I finally got lucky at 38 and met a guy named Mike Pinkston who went and learned all the things you need to learn outside of, what they learn in school. And he's the one who started, to impact my life. And he recognized, in his words, I'd only been seeing him a couple months, and he said, "You have a gift, you need to come work for me." And, I wasn't, I had too much recovery to do and all of that. But eventually what I ended up, well, let me just say this. I was in his office for my first appointment. I told him how my mom was an alcoholic, and I woke up at 10 years old just to use the bathroom at night. I opened up the door and there she was, passed out naked on the toilet. And I literally felt myself like Star Trek, the buzzing starting in my feet, and I was screaming, I'm dying, I'm dying. And I just split like that just broke me open. And so I told him about that. My first wife, in working with him, I discovered she was a borderline personality, narcissistic sociopath, and there was physical abuse and emotional abuse, and anyway, I was just kind of laying out my life history, but not thinking the childhood had much to do with it. And I summed up my kind of life story up to that point. I think I was 38, and I said, Mike, I just don't know how to be a man. And he said 13 words that changed my life. He said, Kenny, when I was in your shoes, I went and became an expert. And that phrase just clicked. If he
Right.
suggested a book or a class, I took it. And in the process of doing that, I started to feel better. Things started to change, and the addictions dropped. All these problems in life started to change, and then the reason I got into this business was I almost took my life after I married a second narcissist. She was much better than the first, but I'd recovered some, but I had more to go.
Or you were
And
just sicker.
yeah, well, like I said, I'd improved, but I wasn't far enough along. And
Right,
but
right, right,
look, I adore both women. They saved my life. If it were not
right.
for those women, because we pick those women, what people don't realize is we pick these people to teach us how to find ourselves. And that's a whole complex, that's everything I teach. I don't want to get into that in this
Yeah.
moment, but they're not the problem. They're the solution, but you have to know the process to discover the solution. Well, that was my frustration. I spent 3 days contemplating taking my life because the withdrawal from that relationship was so severe.
Yes.
And what I realized was, I was writing my kids a suicide note, and I could write about how much pain I was in, but when it came to just, trying to justify why this is best for everybody, I'm like, well, that's codependent, that's transference. Like, because I went and became somewhat of an expert at that time, I knew too much psychology. I couldn't outshrink myself. And then I had another realization. I went, I shouldn't be here. I'd been pursuing recovery at that point for God, 15 years or something. And here I am. And that's when I realized there's a massive gap in the personal development, psychology, teaching, healing field. And so I went back in my office and I wrote down, I want to come up with groundbreaking processes that nobody else has discovered that'll fundamentally change the way we treat and help people. And over the last 10 years, that's at least to me, I'm sure maybe, I don't know everybody out there, but there are things I talk about and teach I've never heard anybody ever mention. Um, and they've shown to be incredibly effective. And they're what I see in all those years. I always had this feeling I need to get to the other side. Like there was a mountain. I remember after
Yeah.
seeing Mike, I originally I was like, there's this mountain. I just need to get to the other side. And I could never get to the other side. And once I started discovering all this stuff, I got to the other side. And that's so I'm generally people come to me after they've been to all the big names in the industry, psychologists, psychiatrists, they've learned a lot, but they can't quite, like something's missing. And then
Right.
they find mind stuff and it's like, oh my God, why hasn't anyone talked about this? And that's what I needed for me. I had to find out the few things Mike didn't know. And, and then, I didn't realize through the process of all that, I was building through the process of my own recovery, my own journey, and all the work I was doing. I was like, oh my God, I just need to teach people this. I didn't know I was building programs and, you know,
Right.
any of this stuff. And, so that's kind of how I ended up here. That's a short version of,
You know what? I really like what you heard. And once again, if you're joining us, Kenny Wise, life coach, is that your title? Author?
yeah, I'm a
Yeah,
certified professional.
public speaker. And, for me, I just, your title for me is transparent and vulnerable and real, and
Thank you.
using, turning your, turning your, your misery into a ministry, whatever that looks like, and
Yeah.
that's what I love. And what I really loved what you said about your two ex-wives, and I can relate to this, is that they actually saved your life.
Hell yeah.
And once we realize, I talk about this a lot, is that, my goal is not to influence others. My goal is to simply help people see life today through God's perspective and not the world or the culture's perspective. And that's what I heard you say, is that when you looked at it through a different set of lenses, okay, and why did this happen, and accept the role that we play in it,
Yeah.
okay, and look at it through a different perspective, we get to use that to go tell others, to help people. And that's what you're doing. I loved what you said there.
Yeah. And what helped me see that other perspective is really what I talk about when it comes to how shame and denial work. Self-deception and denial is the single greatest killer on the planet today. It infiltrates politics, religion, relationships, every health, everything. Nobody's talking about it. Well, I don't know that nobody. Very Byron Katie, her process is a form of confronting self-deception, but that's the secret. If you and I don't hear people in this industry, whatever they call themselves, psychologists, psychiatrists, teachers, healers, life coaches,
Right.
that isn't the main thing they're teaching people. And that's why people aren't getting to the other side. If you can't see how you're in deception, you'll never get there. And that's
Oh,
the biggest
Kenny,
thing
that's
I've figured
beautiful.
out is the self-deception. Because I teach four things: truth, responsibility, healing, and forgiveness. Well, people don't know that all of us lie to ourselves 10 to 200 times a day. I mean,
Yeah.
simple little, like my latest book, Your Journey to Being Yourself, I lay out a complete process to confront your self-deception. And it's fascinating as people read it, they realize, oh my God, my normal conversation, just talking about going to the grocery store, everybody's normal conversations about any, even simple topics, are filled with deceptive techniques. Like we're
Right.
constantly deceiving ourselves and deceiving others. And until you see that and you start working on that, and so that's why responsibility is next. Truth, I have to get into truth. I have to face that deception. To do that, I have to take responsibility that I chose this narcissist, that out of the billions of people, not because I'm an empath and they're attracted to me, but
No.
because I haven't done the work on myself to see how I'm in deception. And I too attracted them and I allowed them into my life. Like,
Yep.
think of it. I had to say yes to this person. I'm responsible for my part in that. I'm not responsible for how awful they are, but they would have never been awful to me if I hadn't been in deception and not seen how I played a part in my responsibility for choosing them. Well, that leads us into, okay, to satisfy, wait, because that's the biggest thing is people are like, I don't want to take responsibility for how bad somebody treated me. Well, once you get into truth and start doing the healing work, now you see it. And that's why, my wives, I adore them more and am more emotionally affectionate for them than I ever was in our relationship. I would never go back to them. I would never, any of that. But those women saved me. And that's the healing you get. And so if you've been with someone horrifically abusive and toxic, when you do this process, every single person recognizes, oh my God, I don't condone you. I won't let you off the hook. I will hold you accountable and responsible for your terrible behavior. But now I'm set free. And that gives us the fourth thing, forgiveness. I can forgive
Yes.
myself for being perfectly imperfect. Nobody taught me any of these things. I just did the best I could. Our society doesn't teach us what we really need to know. So it's not my fault. I'm not to blame for picking this person. And so that sets me free, but it also sets me free of the resentment because, all of that resentment is, you know, um, when we blame, all we're doing is shaming.
Yeah.
It's back on us, and we don't see that because of the deception. So it's just we're free. And that's, you brought up God, that's a biblical process. Like
Yeah.
that's what the Bible is after is, even we're human and limited. We're going to make mistakes and you're forgiven. Well,
Yeah.
this process allows you to find that forgiveness that, you know, for people who are spiritual and want to feel that grace. This is how you find it.
You know, you said talking about forgiveness, you're very elegant with your wordsmithing. You know, when I'm asked, Michael, you've truly forgiven, and how can you forgive a grandfather that since the day you can remember as a child, sexually abusing you? I mean, how can you forgive him? And I have forgiven him, and it's like your ex-wives, he's buried, he died, but here's how I forgave. And it's like what you said, is I had to accept the role I played in it. And people go, "What?
Yeah.
You played a role in that?" And I said, "I did." And the role that I played in it was I chose to hold on to the resentment. Okay. I don't
Beautiful.
forget it. It's a wound, but I'm not resentful. And once I forgave, okay, it has opened up so many different things where when I speak and and share this forgiveness, how men will come up to me that can relate to sexual abuse where I can't go to a wall urinal, I have to go into a stall and shut the door. And I was literally speaking at a treatment center, and I was brain locked, so I go in the bathroom and say, "Hey, God, put the words in my mouth, woo woo woo," and I noticed I couldn't go to a wall urinal because the guy there and one was empty, so I went into the stall. So when I came out, I shared this story, what I just experienced of what I'm still suffering. And there was a gentleman that started crying. And he came up and hugged me. He says, "Thank you for sharing that because I do the same thing." And then driving home, it just hit me that how, God was using my grandfather today as a result of forgiveness to speak through
Yeah.
and share that. And then, like 3 weeks later, I'm getting thousands of emails from all the prisons and jails in the country that man was a bigwig at Securus Technologies, government communication, and he put M to the Rock on every tablet in every prison in every jail so they can hear, what we talk about. And this show here will be an audio on every tablet in every
Yeah.
jail and every prison for all the inmates to listen to. So that is a result of that. That would have never happened if I was still holding on to resentments and anger because it blocks me from my destiny. You
Amen.
agree with that?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. The first thing I want to address is um, you said I'm very elegant with my wordsmithing. Um, I have to own that, many times when I watch things I say or do, I don't feel that.
Oh, it's a
I
gift.
watch
It's
people
very
like
good.
watch people like Gabor Mate, and I'm like, oh, he's so much. I wish I could. Or Jordan Peterson, his depth and breadth
Yeah.
of met like he just remembers everything, and I'm just like, man, I'm not that. So
All right, Kitty, I'm gonna
there
coach
are
you.
moments where I can let in and accept that compliment, and certain pieces I'm like, wow, I really like the way I put that together. But I'm still insecure about the way I communicate things and that I don't always find the right words that I'd like. Because even in this moment, even though I'm on one hand, I'm very secure with the work I've done and the things I teach. I'm human. I'm limited.
Yeah.
And so I'm still afraid and scared that I'm not putting out the right things. And so my natural tendency is I will freeze. That's what I learned to do is freeze and fawn and then flight. And so I know that when I watch this back, I'll be unthawed and I'll go, I should have, why did I say that? So I just want to take ownership
Well, let me coach you, okay?
of that piece.
Accept, yeah, accept my compliment.
And that's what I'm saying is I can accept some of it
Right.
and recognize there are certain parts where I will go, oh, okay, yeah, I'll let that in. That part, I really like the way I said that. But that child inside of me is still yearning for his father's approval. And
Yes.
so when I see myself be less than perfect or notice, wow, I would have liked to use these words instead, I can't accept your compliment. But that's not about you. You know, that's still me on the journey, working on letting go, like you, the story you just told, the resentment and the hurt that I have for my father, which then I borrow from the past and put on your face and go, oh, I can't accept that compliment. Like I'm making, this is what people don't realize is every emotion we have as an adult, every emotional reaction, you are not present. It is not the person in front of you and their words or their actions that you feel hurt by. Your brain is reliving pain from the past. And you bring that emotion, that learned construct, and you put it on this person. That doesn't mean you condone behaviors. I'm just, people don't, we now know you're not born with emotions, they're learned constructs. And so this is where we're in deception. We think this person hurt us. No, no, no. This tells you that there's an incident back here that you still need to do the truth, responsibility, healing, and forgiveness on. And so that's why I'm bringing this all up is the part of me that I'm still working on that accepts your compliment is the piece that there's a piece of that little boy that's still needs work and still needs me to gather him in. And the way I do that is to be vulnerable and open and share it with you. And so that the adult me can basically, in this moment, what is really happening is the adult me is soothing that hurt little boy and going, no, you're okay. I'm here now. I'm here to protect you. And the way I do it is this. And so he can calm down. And that allows me to not go so much into freeze and flight. I can stay present and hear your words and go, thank you very much. That's very sweet and kind of you to say.
Mhm.
I appreciate that. I feel heard because the little boy in me never felt heard. So thank you
So
for
beautiful. I mean, what you just said and explain, did right there is why me personally is attracted to listening to you because here is a expert who works very hard. He's a passionate person about what he does, Kenny Wise. All right. But here he is right now. You just saw a person being very vulnerable over something that we think is very little.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. But it will grow. I mean, I can relate to that. Something so little will grow and we stuff and stuff and stuff and stuff and stuff and stuff. And then we pop. And I start seeking visible things to try to make that feeling go away. It could start with, it could start with just cussing. Cuss, if I cuss, for me, I don't have anything against it, but for me, I'm in fear.
Yeah.
I'm in fear. And it can lead up and lead up and lead up. And the next thing I got needles in my arms and I'm locked up again over someone complimenting me over the way I said something. And my brain is telling me, my thoughts, okay, are telling me, um, well, your dad never thought you were good. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that was beautiful. I mean, that was beautiful. And that helped me. That really helped me because I am I want to get into something. Golly, there's so much we could talk about. I mean, you just open up my brain because I can
Well,
relate.
I got time. If you want to go longer than an hour, I got the time. So I'm
Well,
happy.
we'll stick to time, but we'll talk offline to do some topics and stuff. But I want to talk about trauma. I've
Yeah.
been listening to a couple of your stuff about trauma, and I've really been engaged in my addiction psychiatrist has, I think he's amazing. I mean, he won't prescribe anything unless someone's seeking therapy or working a program of recovery, because he says, all I'm trying to do is bridge the gap to get you to recovery. Because if recovery is here, then Matt goes away. Medically assisted treatment, that goes away. I've done my job, and that's why I love him, Dr. Lee Spencer here in Dallas, and so but he made the suggestion that, I needed to seek therapy for my trauma. Okay. And I heard him, but I put it off because I've worked all 12 steps and I do this and I service and I do all this service work and I'm born again. I mean, that's my story. I don't use the cross as a marketing tool. It's just me. It's within, it's my personal relationship. Okay. And it works. And then, you know, my mentor, said, listen, there's some things that the 12 steps can't help, and I highly suggest you get some therapy on your trauma. Okay. Great suggestion. I heard him. Okay. But I didn't pursue it. And now the girl that I'm with, the long-term relationship I'm in now, who's brilliant, is recognizing as a result of Kenny, we've been in the process for the last 4 months of writing a book and doing a film with Krishanda Lee Perez out of Los Angeles. And I am open, and I feel safe with her, and she's passionate, and she can relate. But I am opening doors again and looking at this trauma, and it has really affected me. So the book has been a blessing. So literally tomorrow, I'm going to start working on my trauma with a gentleman down in San Antonio. I'm driving down there today. Lee and I are to do a 3-day in-person session to start working on this trauma. So I've been watching you. I've been watching Dr. Rob Kelly. I've been and Dr. Gaber Mate. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Yeah,
Um,
good. I love Gabor. I
oh,
mean,
just a
he and I
Gabor. I
are
mean,
kindred spirits. We teach the same thing.
you do,
Yeah, but like I said, I think
but
he's more elegant than I am. I love the way
well,
he
it's just
phrases
beautiful that,
things.
but y'all are y'all's message is consistent where I'm like going, okay, God was speaking to me and said, let's go address this because I realized that when I address this and work on it, my stories, I'm not, and you do the same thing. We're not demonizing our ex-wives. Okay. We're not demonizing the people who harmed me. Okay. But if I work on my trauma for the first time ever, okay, my spirituality will actually grow.
Amen.
My story will grow and I could share more. But that's a long intro into the question, what is trauma and is it a broad spectrum? And what is the solution to trauma?
Okay, well, I've written 2 books on that, so it's
I'm
going to
going to
be
buy
tough
them.
for me to fully answer. Uh, I will try and I'll see if I can shorten it, but it's my reality that all of us have been through childhood trauma. It's unavoidable. We're human and limited. Like, I find it nearly narcissistic that people think they haven't been through childhood trauma. Think of it. In everything we do in life, we go to school, we spend years learning something. And I use this example. Tom Brady might be one of the greatest athletes that's ever walked this planet. And for 40 years, he had experts in diet, how to throw the ball, physical conditioning, mental conditioning, every aspect of it. Yet every single day, he threw interceptions, incompletions, and fumbled, made mistakes nonstop. Yet all of us think we got through childhood with parents. Our society, virtually no one takes a single parenting class. Virtually no one heals their own existing childhood trauma, and they somehow think they got out of childhood without trauma. Like, think of how much deception there is in that, how much denial and a lack of education. A simple example, and most therapists, psychologists, and psychiatrists, and the people who make up the DSM, they wouldn't call this trauma, and this is the problem. I tell a story in my first book how, or maybe it's my second book, like, this is how easy trauma happens. I was reaching into the refrigerator to grab cottage cheese, and my mom comes running over screaming, no, 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 that's for the dogs. Okay, so what that said to me, and see, children are great perceivers of emotion, terrible interpreters of them. All right, because we
Mm-hmm.
learn our interpretations from parents. And since none of us have been taught emotional authenticity, which is I teach, which goes way beyond emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence doesn't even give you emotional intelligence. That's a whole nother topic. But so in that moment, the simulation concept and definition I chose based on what I'd been exposed to as a child, the emotions that I put in my head were this: one, if I eat, I get in trouble. Two, if I want my mom to love me and not be angry at me, I better not eat. And three, in this house, we feed the dogs before the kids.
Mm.
From that point forward, I starved myself for almost over 30 years. I'm playing pro hockey and I'm living off super big gulps and ding dongs. If you ask me to go eat, I'd say, God, I hate eating. It bores me. So what happens in those moments is a child creates an adaptation. We go, wait a minute, how am I going to survive the family dynamics? Well, eating's a problem. And so people think they have these personalities and these interests and things that they like and they don't like. They're all deception. It's part of what I call the worst day cycle. We all experience trauma. That's step one. That creates fear. Fear is an emotional chemical addiction that our brain and body becomes addicted to. And so we repeat it the rest of, because our brain doesn't know the difference between right and wrong. All it cares about is, have I experienced this or not? If I've experienced it, it will repeat it, even if it's bad for us. That's why we stay in terrible relationships and keep victimizing ourselves. That kicks us into shame. And shame is a power dynamic where, as an adult, because in that moment, my mom shamed me, not on purpose, just she'd never been taught emotional authenticity and how to communicate that, wait a minute, I'm overspending the money your father gives me for the monthly budget. So if you eat that, I'm going to be broke and I can't feed you. And oh, by the way, the cottage cheese, I use that to give the dogs their medicine. But because she doesn't have containment of herself emotionally, she dumps her own worst day cycle right into me. So her shame, it's called induced shame. My mom hasn't dealt with her trauma. She induces it into me. Now I carry it. So now I'm embodying my mom's unhealed pain. And then once we become an adult, we then self-victimize. That's why we pick the narcissist, that we pick all of these people, and the trauma we experience as a child, it's a form of repetition compulsion, but I don't want to get into that.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah, they never, Janae, Freud, they never concluded that process. Well, my worst day cycle to me concludes, wait a minute, this is what we're doing, but they just had some things wrong. And I lay that out in my latest book of, that's why I call it the worst day cycle. And so the reason is this: as a child, I was powerless. I can't feed myself. I can't work. I can't leave. My life depends on mom and dad. So I have to create the adaptation of, I'm not hungry. But now as an adult, we then choose to victimize ourselves because now I have power. I have the choice. I can pick the narcissist. I can pick all of these things and victimize myself with it. But because of our society, the lack of understanding all of this, to protect ourselves from admitting that what my mom did was childhood trauma, we all go into self-deception and denial, go, nope, it's them. They're the problem. And so ultimately, your base question was, what is trauma? Trauma is any event where you had a negative emotional reaction, and it creates either a falsely empowered reaction or a disempowered reaction. So my reaction to my mom was both disempowering. I disempowered myself by starving myself, but then I came over top of it and falsely empowered by myself by controlling myself and others around food. And so these are very complex dynamic. Like, this is why you have to go become an expert, like Mike said, so you can see how you're doing all of this to yourself. That's the shame. And then you're denying the truth that, wait a minute, I'm the one who's now responsible. Remember, truth, responsibility, healing allows you to see how all of this is going on. Well, from that place, I can forgive my mom. Oh my God. My parents were 16, 18 when they're married, 21 and 23 with 4 kids.
Yes.
She was abused as a child. She was adopted.
Yes.
Dad was beat to death, filled with rage. He didn't hit us, but he was so detached. Well, I can have empathy. Here's the key. People use, this is where people get stuck when they talk about their parents. They go, yeah, but it's not my mom's fault because of everything I just listed. They use but. And so,
which negates everything they just said.
Exactly. And you have to learn to switch from but to and. And so what that sounds like is, yeah, my mom went through all of this stuff and abuse and everything. And because my parents never chose to do the healing work, develop emotional authenticity and all of these aspects and heal their own childhood trauma, they dumped all of that into me, and they're responsible for that. And it's loving for me to live in truth about their perfect imperfections and how that affected me. And so we are both on this journey together. So it's and, not but. Both are true. Yes, they had no choice and no chance, especially because society never taught. Look, we're only 50 years. This is what people don't realize. We're only 50 years in to actually dealing with emotions and trauma and childhood. And it all started with Oprah, Phil Donahue, all the talk shows. Previous to that, we didn't deal with any of these things as a society. So
You're
the
right.
equivalents, this is what I point out. Emotionally, we are so uneducated and so underdeveloped as a society. It equates to us not even recognizing that the earth is no longer flat, that we don't know how to make tools or build fire. That's the cause of everybody's dysfunction and struggle, is that because people don't know it's wrong. You do not become your thoughts. Every single thought you ever have is generated by an emotion and feeling. It's how our brain works. We know that neuroscientifically, and that's another thing that psychologists, psychiatrists, people in this industry, they're trying to teach people to change your thoughts. Complete waste of time. You have to change the way you feel. And so think of it. Did you play sports growing up?
I did. I play golf.
Okay, me too. Yeah, I played golf professionally. So, okay, remember this.
So I was
You
a
won a
caddy on the
tournament.
tour. I was a caddy on the tour for Lanny Watkins for 5 years.
I knew I recognized you.
Really?
That's okay. Now I was like, there's something about him. Yeah, okay. That makes sense. All right. Now I was
When did you hold
stuff
on? We
and I'm
got
like,
to when did you play? When did you play the
well,
tour?
I didn't play on the tour, but when Lanny was playing, I was watching, I was growing up watching all of that. So
Yeah.
at any rate, well, think of it this way. Remember when you go to a tournament and you woke up and you're like, oh no, something doesn't feel right. Today is not going to go good. Oh my God, I'm going to shoot 82. Oh no, 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 no. And what'd you do? You threw thought at it. Come on, Michael, you can do this. Be positive. You're going to play great. And what'd you shoot? 82. The
Yeah.
thoughts didn't change anything.
Yeah.
Now think of the reverse. You woke up and you went, oh, 65. I'm going to birdie the first 3 holes. Like you can't
I'm
touch me.
shooting 0 today. Yeah.
Exactly. Did you hear the difference?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the way you felt. It's
Yeah.
not the way you thought. You woke up with 2 different feelings. The only way you can turn an 82 into a 62 is you have to shift the way you feel.
Yeah.
Because what you're feeling, that gut feeling, is driving the thought that I'm
Yeah.
not going to play well. And conversely, the gut feeling is I'm going to play well. And
Yeah.
that's well, there's several big gaps, but that's one of the biggest gaps in people trying to help others is they're trying to change their thoughts. Waste of time. You have to give them the process, and it's a simple process. What I teach people is whenever anything is going on in your life, ask yourself 3 simple questions. What am I feeling? Well, most 70% of the population is detached from what they're feeling. Well, I have a free feelings wheel you can download on my website. I tell people, like I check it every hour. I set an alarm on my phone. You don't have to be as hyper vigilant as I was.
Yeah. I can't wait. I can't wait to do this.
Check it. What am I feeling? And most people will start at the beginning, angry, sad, scared, happy. They don't have what's called emotional specificity or granularity because there's detachment from their emotions. But the wheel goes out and gets more specific emotionally. And as you grow more, then I tell people use a thesaurus because there are millions of emotional words, but you can't fit them all on the wheel. But anyway, you start with it and you go, okay, I feel frustrated. Next question number 2 is, where in my body do I feel it? Because we store all emotional trauma in our body. I feel it in my stomach. I feel it in my, whatever it may be. If it's in multiple places, ask yourself which one is the most, is the heaviest, has the most feeling to it. Then ask yourself, what's my first memory of having this thought and feeling?
Hmm.
Most people will remember something in the last week or 2, or maybe the last couple of years. Write it down. Okay, well, I felt frustrated when I went to work last week and the boss said blah, 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 blah. Okay, write that down. Okay, what's your next memory before that? Well, that was when, I got cut off by a driver. Okay, what's before that? Keep going back. Eventually, you're going to land at, oh my God, I was 4 years old. And I wanted my dad to throw the football to me, but he kept throwing it to my older brother. And
Yeah.
in that moment, I felt neglected, abandoned, invisible. Oh my, and there's the proof of the worst day cycle. And your feeling in this moment has nothing to do with this moment.
Yeah.
You're reliving your childhood trauma. And that's true for everybody because emotions are learned constructs. And so thoughts are useless. You have to become an expert in your worst day cycle and how you're reliving your unhealed childhood trauma. And that's how all of us work. That's why trauma, everyone's been through it, because whenever you have a good or negative reaction, all you're doing is reliving your childhood. Well, if
Yeah.
you don't know that, you got no shot.
Yeah.
And the big book and lots of these things don't teach
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And
You're right.
that's the gap. Like I've been through the 12 steps, all of that great process, but that's why I got into this. There are gaps.
Right.
Nobody's teaching that this is what you need to do. And then you need, I teach what I call the authentic self cycle, which reconnects you to your authenticity. That's the truth, responsibility, healing, and forgiveness. And so what I teach people is how to rework that emotion. And that becomes the new emotional chemical addiction that replaces the fear, shame, and denial response. And
Wow.
that's how you heal the trauma. It's a much more elaborate process, but that's a
I,
basic.
I I love the solution that you say because it makes sense. But the takeaway from that, the real that I can relate to that has truly got me free was to look at it through God's perspective, not my perspective, and go, you know what? The grandfather who was sexually abusing me is my mom's dad. My mom, who's physically abusing me. And I was always told that I looked just like him, acted like him, my mannerisms were like him, my handwriting was like him.
Oh,
But in her defense, she didn't know what he was doing to me. Okay.
yeah.
But I also, my mannerisms are very similar to my mom. So she was looking at herself and she was scared and doing everything she could so I wouldn't turn out to be like her and her dad. And then I looked at her going, well, I can't imagine the childhood she grew up in, with him.
Yeah.
And then I even got research on my grandfather and understood his childhood growing up. So I made the decision to take responsibility and change the cycle, to
Yeah.
change the
And and
cycle. And that's
and
to
that's
work
the
on
thing
me.
is we can want to be different than our parents, but unless you you do the authentic self cycle recovery work of truth, responsibility, healing, and
Yeah,
forgiveness,
I love that.
just thinking about it won't do it because your emotions drive every action you ever take starts with a feeling,
Yeah.
not a thought. So if
Yeah.
you want to change how you're living your life, you have to change emotionally. And that's why I teach emotional authenticity, because everything starts from that. And so your mom couldn't change. Her thoughts were, I want to be different, but she'd never healed the emotions. So she's not even in touch or present to how her emotions are driving her behavior.
Right.
And the other aspect to this is your grandfather. People don't molest children unless it's been done to them.
Right.
They're just reliving what's done. And that's the worst day cycle: trauma, fear, shame, and denial. They're just stuck reliving their trauma against themselves. But now he's in control of it. Now he's shaming and belittling himself. It happened to him. So now he's going to induce that shame into somebody else to try and reconcile. But all it does is boomerang back and keep him stuck. But no one's taught him any of this stuff. So he's doing the best he can. And he's also responsible for choosing not to learn how to stop it. It's
That's
both.
right.
It's not one or the other. They are both together. And that's the forgiveness piece. And so that's where I have to be responsible and go, yes, look, you can't be blamed for doing something you weren't even aware you were doing. You're just doing the best you can with the information you have at the time.
Right.
Now, for people listening to this for the first time and hearing what I'm saying, this is the first day in your life you have ever had a choice. You didn't even know emotions ran your life. You didn't know about the worst day cycle. You didn't know about any of this. So you're not to blame for anything before this. And from this day forward, you have an opportunity, if you choose to go learn. Now, if you choose not to, You're responsible for that choice. I don't know if I'd blame myself, but I would hold myself accountable that, like you said, several times I've had the opportunity to look at childhood trauma. So you weren't ready, and that's fine. There's I detail the process of change, and that's how it works for most people. And we are responsible for the outcomes that happen during that period. But it's not I personally wouldn't shame or belittle myself. That is also part of the change process, is we
Right.
will know what to do, or we know what we need to do, but we can't do it. And that's all based on childhood trauma too. And
Right.
so all we're ever trying to do. I mean, look, we're human. We're limited. We're not perfect. And
Right.
so even when we know what to do, we won't be able to do it.
Yeah,
That's
it's
okay.
progress, not perfection. And
Exactly.
Kenny, this is, oh my God, this has been great. There's so many things, great topics that that we can talk about, and I would love to have you come back on the show and to deliver these messages of hope. It's what it is. A little promo for you, for the viewers and the listeners. The four things that Kenny shared with us. Okay. I'm challenging you to do these four things. And what is the name of the book again?
Well, I have two books. My first book is called Your Journey to Success, and that lays out the worst day cycle. My latest
Okay.
book, that just came out, is called Your Journey to Being Yourself. And that it takes the concepts in my first book and goes to a whole nother level, especially around shame and denial, which are the secrets to recovery, shame and self-deception.
That's all
And
right. That's right. And so the four things are truth.
yes,
What's the next one?
responsibility,
Responsibility,
healing, and forgiveness.
healing, and forgiveness. We challenge you to work those four things. All right. Just do it once. Okay. And if it doesn't work, I'll refund you all your misery. You know what I mean?
And if they
So,
want to do that, my books, my videos, my classes, that look, I have given out hundreds of thousands of dollars of free content.
yeah,
There's so many free downloads on my website. There's a free class on my university classes, thousands of videos. Like, there's even a thing on my website. As soon as you open up, it says, Ask Kenny. You can type in a question. Why does a narcissist do this? Or whatever it may be. And it pulls from all of my content, gives you the answer, and then it gives you a bibliography of, well, you can learn more from this video, from this download, from this book.
wow.
Like, it is an encyclopedia of recovery, and it's free. Like, I pay so that people can
Ah.
just, they don't have to go to YouTube and go, how am I going to find an answer? They can just come to my website, and if I've talked about it, there it is. And it gives
And
you
your website is what?
kennyweiss.net.
KennyWise.net. We will have that in the description, and we will have, as you can see, some pop-ups are going on with Kenny's name and his website. Make sure you visit the website. And I want you back on. I want to dive more deep into what is narcissism, what is mental health, the solution. Also, medication, talk about medication, and also do a show on inner child. We hear that word a lot, but what does that mean? And I think those are really good topics that we can talk about. If you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe to our channel, and subscribe to Kenny Wise's channel. Follow him on all his platforms. I know I do. I know that I do, and I see his stuff every day, and it's uplifting. It's solution based, and that's what we talk about at M to the Rock. It is solution based, because my entire life I would go to the bar and hang out with people that would co-sign on my resentments. They would just co-sign on my resentments. And little did I know we had a golf connection. So I look forward to that conversation. I got a Forrest Gump story. So I'm really excited about that. And I look forward to our friendship, Kenny, and you've helped me. And I do know this, you being on the show, and I see it in you as you're sharing, it puts you in the safest place in the world. And that was in the present, because we are out of self. As we are helping others and being authentic, I didn't think about the future once. I didn't think about the past once. I was right here, right now, because you and I were out of self, out of self.
Yeah, I
And
think you
so,
can see I get pretty fired up about all this stuff.
No, it's not. You're passionate, and that's what I love about it. Absolutely love about it. Kenny, we appreciate you so much. From all of us here at Into the Rock in Dallas, Texas. I got 3 words. It's got 8 letters, and it's got one meaning. I love you. Goodbye, everyone. And most importantly, make it a great day.